A devastating punch echoed through the arena. The fighter crashed to the mat. Gasps rippled through the crowd as the referee dove in, checking if the fallen man could even move. But the victor was already parading around, arms raised high, a cocky grin stretched across his face. He strutted past the cameras, leaned over his opponent, and hurled insults, loud, unapologetic, full of arrogance. Some fans roared in approval. Others exchanged uneasy glances. Not far from the cage, in the front row, Jason Statham sat motionless. No clapping, no reaction, just sharp, steady eyes locked onto the arrogant fighter. The fighter spotted him. Still breathing heavy, he grabbed the mic and pointed straight at Statham. "You think you're tough in your movies? Step in here, let's see if you're real." A hush rippled through the crowd. Then came the chants. Some cheered wildly for Jason. Others waited, breathless. Jason remained seated for a long moment. Then, calm, as ever he stood. His gaze never wavered, shoulders relaxed. Owning the moment. No words. Just one slow step toward the ring. The arena went dead silent. Everyone knew. Everything was about to change. The young fighter paced the cage like a showman, soaking in the energy. Then, with a smirk, he grabbed the mic. "Hey, Statham!" His voice cut through the stadium noise. "I see you sitting there all quiet. You think you're tough in those movies, huh? Why don't you step in here? Show us if it's real." Gasps spread like wildfire. The entire arena seemed to shift. Some fans laughed. Others turned to their friends, whispering, nudging, waiting. Then the chant started. "Jason, Jason, Jason!" It rippled through the seats, growing louder. Some voices filled with excitement, others with anticipation, waiting to see what would happen next. Jason didn't flinch. He sat still, his gaze locked on the fighter inside. The cage. No smile, no reaction. Just that sharp, unreadable calm. The young fighter bounced on his feet, feeding off the crowd's energy, his smirk stretching wider. Then Jason moved. Slow, controlled, deliberate. He stood, adjusting his jacket with practiced ease. He exuded an effortless composure. The stadium seemed to freeze. The chants softened. Phones lifted. Every camera swung toward him. One slow step. Forward, no bravado, no words, but everyone knew the real fight was about to begin. Breathing heavily, the fighter paced the cage like a predator. His voice rang out, riding the energy of the crowd. "You see that?" He spread his arms, soaking in the moment. "That's what real fighters look like." Scattered cheers erupted, building into a wave, but he wasn't finished. The smirk returned as he pointed straight at Jason. "Hey, Statham, you've been sitting there all quiet all night." He let it hang for a second before adding, "But you think you're tough in your movies, huh?" Gasps rippled through the audience. Cameras swung toward Jason. The fighter kept circling the cage, throwing light punches for the cameras. On screen, it's all flashy. But in here? He pointed to the mat beneath his feet. "This is real." Some fans laughed. Others exchanged glances, uncertain where this was heading. But then, like a fuse catching fire, the crowd shifted. A few fans near the front stood, chanting, "Jason! Jason!" The chant spread. Phones lifted. Every lens fixed on Statham. The fighter grinned, feeding off the moment. "Tell you what," he said, voice sharp. "You're sitting front row. Why don't you step in here? Let's see if you've got more than a stunt double backing you up." Another wave of gasps. Some fans hooted, wildly. Others just stared, caught between shock and exhilaration. And still, Jason didn't move. He sat exactly as he had been, posture loose, eyes locked on the fighter. No grin, no anger, just that quiet, unreadable calm. The fighter waited, bouncing, on his feet, taunting louder. "Come on, Statham. One round, let's see what you've really got." More cameras turned to Jason. Murmurs spread. People leaned forward, breath held, waiting. Jason let the fighter talk. He didn't need to answer. Slowly, the energy in the stadium shifted, not to the fighter's words but to Jason's silence. The buzz rolled like a wave across the arena. Yet, at ringside, everything felt oddly still. Then, Jason stood. It wasn't rushed. It wasn't showy. Just quiet precision. He slid off his jacket smoothly and handed it to a crew member nearby. His eyes never left the cage. The crowd reacted instantly. Flashes lit up. People murmured. Energy crackled. Inside the cage, the young fighter caught it, too. A wide grin spread across his face. He grabbed the mic, pacing near the ropes. Oh, he's actually standing now. He pointed toward Jason, playing to the crowd. Look at that, folks. Statham's coming down to play. He threw his arms out dramatically. About time. Thought maybe you'd stay sitting there, hiding behind those sunglasses. Some fans laughed, but it was uneasy now. No one was sure if this was just hype or something real. Jason walked forward, unhurried, like a man entering a room he already owned. Every step seemed to suck the air out of the arena. The chant swelled again. Jason, Jason! The fighter turned back to the crowd, still smirking. Come on, people, cheer him on. Give your action hero some support, he'll need it. Tossing the mic aside, he bounced on his feet, brimming with confidence. Security at the cage stepped back without question. The gate opened. Jason climbed in. No flash, no theatrics, just effortless movement. He adjusted his stance, loose but grounded. Eyes locked on the fighter. Cameras flashed. Commentators fell silent beneath the rising roar. Inside the cage, the fighter circled lazily, still grinning. What's the plan, Jason? His voice dripped with mockery. Gonna throw some movie punches? Maybe a spinning kick for the cameras? Jason said nothing. He stepped closer, and closer. The distance between them vanished until they stood face to face, just inches apart. The arena quieted, that breathless kind of silence before everything changes. Up close, everything shifted. The fighter was still grinning, still trying to hold the upper hand. He bounced lightly on his heels, rolling his shoulders, keeping loose. One last jab, casual, mocking. Better hope the director's watching. Jason didn't react. No smile, no flinch, no shift in his eyes. Just controlled, unshaken focus. The crowd leaned in. Phones raised. No one wanted to miss a second. Something was happening. The bravado in the room started to drain. The noise simmered. A collective breath being held. The energy changed. Not from what was being said, but from what wasn't. No ref. No bell. Just two men. Nothing staged. Nothing scripted. The fighter's smirk flickered, just for a second. Jason hadn't taken the bait. And that sliver of silence, that space where the usual trash talk should have rattled an opponent, felt heavier than anything else. For the first time, doubt flickered in the young man's eyes. Jason's presence alone said more than words ever could. The crowd picked up on it. Fast, the chant started again. Jason! Jason! Louder now, a wave rolling from one side of the arena to the other. Flashes exploded from cameras. The air was thick, electric, one move away from eruption. Then, like a live wire snapping, the young fighter lunged first. No bell. No ref's instruction, just instinct. He exploded toward Jason, a blur of motion. Fists flying, wild with adrenaline, arrogance, and the roar of the crowd behind him. Left hook, right jab, sharp kick, a flurry of strikes. For a moment, the arena lit up with cheers. Fans screamed, some chanting his name, but inside the cage, the energy was different. Jason moved with surgical precision, shoulders loose, breathing steady. Every punch the fighter threw, Jason slipped past, letting each blow slice through empty air. No wasted movement. The young fighter kept pressing, his grin tightening now. Sweat glistened. He peppered in more trash talk between swings. Come on, Statham, hit me. Jason didn't blink, didn't take the bait. He blocked one strike effortlessly, sidestepped another. Each time the fighter swung harder, Jason moved even smoother, like water flowing around stone. The crowd started to sense it. Some cheered louder, trying to will the fighter's punches to land. But Jason remained centered, hands up, eyes locked, calm, under chaos. The fighter's tempo quickened, punches snapped harder, kicks swung higher. Desperate now, forcing Jason to stumble, to react, to break rhythm. But Jason didn't budge. His counters were sharp, efficient, just enough to redirect, just enough to rattle. A stiff jab to the ribs, a clean parry deflecting a hook, a subtle step back letting the fighter overextend. The young man's face shifted, grin tightening, breath heavier, hands looser. He came in again, swinging wide. A powerful uppercut aiming to finish it. Jason dipped under it, one clean strike to the body, another counter. Sharp, precise. The fighter's head snapped back. The roar of the crowd dulled, murmurs rising. People started noticing. Jason wasn't just matching the fighter's energy. He was dissecting it. The young fighter bounced back, jaw clenched, wiping sweat from his brow. He circled, eyes narrowing. That cocky grin, gone. One last desperate move. He feinted left, spun into a kick. Wild, reckless. Jason saw it coming. He ducked, closed the distance, caught the younger man off balance, a sharp elbow to the shoulder. The fighter stumbled. The crowd gasped. Momentum had shifted. The young man blinked, frustration flashing across his face. His breathing was uneven now. He had walked into the cage expecting a show. What he faced was something else entirely. Everyone could feel it. Jason hadn't thrown anything flashy, hadn't played to the cameras. He moved like a man who had done this, long before the crowd ever arrived. The younger fighter roared, charging one more time. Fast, sloppy, desperate. Jason waited. Then, in one fluid motion, he stepped forward, one clean strike, a lightning-fast right hook. It landed, sharp, precise. The sound of impact echoed through the stadium. The fighter froze, eyes wide. Then, his legs gave out beneath him. He crumpled, hard onto the mat. For half a heartbeat, the entire stadium froze. No shouts, no chants, no reaction. Just the sound of camera shutters clicking, capturing the moment, burned into every witness's mind. Jason stood over the fallen fighter. Expression, unreadable. No raised fist, no taunting, no gloating, just control. Then, the eruption. The silence shattered into a deafening roar. Jason! Jason! Louder than before. Fans leapt to their feet, fists pumping the air, voices clashing with the pounding bass of the stadium speakers. Phones shot up, screens flashing, capturing history. Some fans near the front slammed the railing, others clapped wildly. Commentators scrambled to form words, their voices drowned beneath the frenzy. Jason glanced briefly toward the VIP section, calm as ever. He gave a single nod, turned toward the cage gate and walked away, without a glance back. Behind him, the fighter lay dazed, blinking up at the bright overhead lights, his chest rising and falling in uneven gasps. Medics rushed in, kneeling beside him. "Can you hear me?" He nodded faintly, but his focus drifted past them, toward the figure exiting the cage. Jason never looked back. The young fighter groaned, rolling onto his side, then forcing himself upright. His movements were sluggish now. No more bounce, no swagger. The grin that had been glued to his face moments earlier? Gone. He rubbed his jaw, disoriented, sweat dripping as the camera zoomed in, catching every detail. The tousled hair, the stunned expression, the shift from arrogance to disbelief. Phones in the front rows locked onto him, flashes still going off. Every stumble recorded. Every breathless second streamed. He looked around at the sea of faces, faces that had once cheered his name. Now, Jason, Jason. The sound rolled in waves. The volume swelled. He winced, wiped his face, tried to shake the haze. But he couldn't drown out the noise. Medics guided him to his feet, but his balance wavered, shoulders sagging. He glanced toward Jason, just in time to see him step out of the cage. No fist pump, no victory pose, no smirk. Jason walked with quiet control, every step measured, calm, unbothered by the chaos behind him. Security staff parted without a word, barely needing to clear a path. Cameras trailed him, capturing the walk, the kind that didn't need words. Back at ringside, people surged toward the railings, stretching their phones out, desperate to seize the moment. Flashes erupted from every angle. Jason reached the edge of the arena and paused, just briefly. A glance toward the VIP section. Familiar faces clapped, some nodding in respect. Jason? Expressionless, cool as ever. He adjusted his jacket, rolled his shoulders casually, then disappeared into the exit tunnel. No post-fight speech. No need for theatrics. His actions had spoken loud enough. Behind him, the chants continued. Jason! Jason! Fans leaned over the barriers, shouting his name. Others scrambled to upload their footage. Some just stood frozen, still processing what they had witnessed. Up in the press box, sports journalists typed furiously, headlines forming before the dust had even settled. Jason Statham floors MMA's cockiest fighter, without a word. Hollywood action star delivers real-life co. Fans stunned. Social media feeds exploded. Clips of the clean knockout flooded timelines, captions spreading like wildfire. Deep in the tunnel, Jason walked, expression unchanged. Crew members stepped aside. Some exchanged glances. No one stopped him. He didn't slow, didn't break stride. He didn't need to. Back inside the arena, the young fighter slumped onto a stool in his corner, a towel draped over his shoulders. He stared at the floor, jaw set, lips tight, knowing full well the cameras were still on him. His fans had fallen quiet. Some still clapped. Others were glued to their screens, watching, rewatching, replaying the moment. There was no mic in his hand now, no trash talk left. Every word he had thrown before, swallowed whole by silence. Silence. Jason's presence lingered long after he left the cage. For the young fighter, it wasn't just the knockout. It was how effortlessly the crowd had shifted, how little noise Jason had to make to change everything. The stadium still buzzed long after Jason Statham disappeared down the tunnel. Headlines spread, cheers echoed, cameras flashed. But beneath all of it, one truth stood clear. Respect is never demanded. It is earned, quietly, consistently, without theatrics. The young fighter had stepped into the cage tonight, convinced that noise, bravado, and aggression defined strength. He believed dominance came from shouting the loudest, swinging the hardest. But real strength doesn't need to announce itself. Jason's calm didn't come from fame or titles. It came from discipline, precision, the ability to let actions speak louder than any insult. In front of thousands, Jason didn't engage in arrogance. He dismantled it, with composure. That is the difference between pretending to be strong and knowing you are. Because when the cameras turn off, when the crowd quiets, when the hype fades, one truth remains. Arrogance crumbles in the face of real skill. And real fighters, they don't talk. They show.